Part 141. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1403. However, it was impossible. Instead of finding something usable in the ashes, the two discovered another thing. Chi-Heiran walked around the thatched cottage, and finally said with a livid face, "They lie, there is no trace of reclamation around here. Where did the watermelons come from?" Fan Zijian frowned, looked at him helplessly and said, "Of course I lied to you, did you realize it now?" The two strong men held big knives. If they wanted to rob them temporarily, they could rob them openly. After all, they were just two teenagers. However, they spent so much effort to lure them and drug them, it was obviously premeditated, and they knew a lot about them. Under such circumstances, they naturally would not expose their lair or stronghold. This thatched cottage, at first glance, they found it on a temporary basis, but unfortunately they were too careless at the time and didn't even go around the area, otherwise they would be suspicious of their performance no matter how real they were. But at that time, the sun was so strong that it made people dizzy and sweaty when they moved. Who would hang around the thatched hut when they are full and have nothing to do? So they still plan carefully and seize the timing tightly. Fan Zijian sighed, lay down on the ground, looked at the sky full of stars and said, "They rode away the horses, we only have 2 legs, how can we catch people in the vast crowd? The most urgent thing is to find the next town, exchange the jade pendant and hire a carriage walk." Chi-Heiran could only look for firewood to make a fire aggrieved. Although it wasn't cold at night, Fan Zijian was not in good health, so he had to be careful. Uncle Fan Zijian waited for Chi-Heiran to serve him, and by the way, he planned the upcoming itinerary and the things he needed to buy in his heart. Now that they have been targeted, those people are still ordered to kill them, and some necessary disguises are also necessary. Fan Zijian made a plan in his heart, and then told Chi-Heiran about it. Chi-Heiran listened to Fan Zijian's advice, and never used his hands and brains. Seeing that he had planned everything, he didn't want to execute it. Although they lost the money, the two teenagers were very optimistic. After all, the jade pendant on Fan Zijian's body was a beautiful jade, and the price was not low. The pawned money was enough for them to reach Xingzhou Mansion. It's not far from Xingyuan Mansion, and it's only 2 days' journey from Xingyuan Mansion to Xingzhou Mansion. The two teenagers were full of confidence, but they were chased and killed as soon as they entered the city. The two of them had been hungry all day, and Chi-Heiran rushed to the town with Fan Zijian on his back, and before he saw the gate of the city, he found out that they were being targeted. At that time he wanted to catch and beat him up, but Fan Zijian said, "Now outside the city, don't startle the snake. After we enter the city, we will take people and tie them to the yamen. Both suspect that the person staring at them is yesterday's bad guy." So the two of them entered the city as if they hadn't noticed. The 2 streets that entered the city gate were filled with all kinds of food, and smelling the scent wafting over, both of them started to growl in disbelief. So Fan Zijian temporarily changed his mind, "Let's pawn off the jade pendants first, and then deal with them after we exchange money for a meal." Chi-Heiran nodded hurriedly, then suddenly his eyes sharpened. He pulled Fan Zijian behind him, and looked at the people on both sides of the city gate with cold eyes. Fan Zijian was a little confused, and asked blankly, "What's wrong?" A group of yamen servants approached the two menacingly, stopped them and asked, "Did you two just enter the city?" Chi-Heiran nodded. The head catcher stretched out his hand to them and said, "Take out your luyin and have a look." The two opened their mouths wide. They ran away from home. How could they get a guide? What's more, the world is in chaos now, and there are countless refugees and refugees. Except for caravans, ordinary people don't need guides to enter and leave the city gate. If they all need guides, how can there be so many refugees in this big week? They have never been interrogated along the way. Fan Zijian's intuition was wrong, so he pulled Chi-Heiran behind him, and said to the policeman with a bitter face, "My lord, we are going to report to the police, and we encountered robbers on the way. Not only the money and banknotes on us were robbed, but also the road guide was also lost." The head catcher sneered, "Do you think we will believe it? You are clearly bandits." After that, he drew out his knife and surrounded them. Fanzigen's face turned cold, and he said, "My lord, don't swear, we are children from a good family. Where did the bandit talk come from?" As soon as Fanzigen's voice fell, the people who followed them all the way jumped out with their knives out, shouting, "Here is the traitor who stole the 20,000 taels of silver notes from the big boss. Brothers, take him down, and the big boss will reward you." The covetous people on both sides of the road immediately pulled out their hidden weapons, and surrounded Chiharan and the others, while the head catcher shouted, "The public will handle the case," and the others quickly backed down, while also looking fiercely at the two of them. Fanzigen couldn't recover at all, but Chiharan grabbed his waist, kicked out the two people who were nearby, and fled with Fanzigen. Just now, he had visually estimated that there were at least 70 or 80 people, including the government servants and the bandits who were ready to move, and the soldiers guarding the gate of the city looked at them with glowing eyes. Chiharan didn't know whether they were moved by the 20,000 taels in the bandits' words, or whether they had colluded with the bandits. He only knew that the government was not reliable now, and it was extremely dangerous to stay in the city. Chiharan's Qinggong is good. Those bandits knew that he was good at kung fu, but they didn't expect it to be so good. The people who lay in ambush along the road were trampled on their heads and flew away almost as soon as they jumped out. They wanted to chase, but how could they keep up with the flying? What's more, there were so many people on the ground. Chiharan walked on the rooftops, and his speed was extremely fast, and they lost track of the two of them in a short while. Fanzigen grabbed Chiharan and said with an ugly face, "Let's go get 2 pieces of clothes and change them on. Since there is an ambush at the south gate, the other gates must be ambushed as well. We have to pretend once or twice before leaving. But we have no money. Exchange them with the jade pendant. Since there was an ambush in the city, they couldn't go to the pawn shop, so they might as well use the jade pendant in this residential area." The 2 teenagers found a house secretly, jumped in and dragged 2 sets of clothes out, went to the kitchen to touch some steamed buns, and then left the jade pendant behind. Fanzigen was still a little bit reluctant. This jade pendant did not have an imprint on it, but it was specially bought by Uncle Zhu as a gift for him in the year he was admitted to Tongsheng, and it was not cheap. Because the jade is lustrous and warm in the touch, he likes it very much, and has often worn it on his body these years. But no matter how reluctant he is also embarrassed to take other people's things for nothing. When Chiharan saw him, he comforted in a low voice, "I wrote down this place, and when we find my brother, we will take the money and come back to redeem it." Fanzigen nodded slightly, changed clothes with Chiharan, and then casually wrapped their clothes on his back. Chiharan wiped a handful of ashes under the stove to blacken himself and Fanzigen, and then hurried to the city gate. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1404. The head catcher searched the area under his jurisdiction upside down and did not find the two of them. He couldn't help frowning. Are you sure they are still hiding in the city? What if they go out of the city? A bearded man in a cotton blouse said, "Our people are ambushing at every city gate. Once we find out, I won't be unaware. What if they have been modified? Can you see through it if you don't go forward and check? These people are all bandits, so they can go forward with a knife in the Nanjing district under his jurisdiction. Afterwards, he can use enthusiastic martial arts people to prevaricate the county captain, but he is not so bold in other districts. Even if they pretend to be heroes of the Green Forest, they can't replace the yamen servants patrolling the streets and guarding the city gates, and it's hard to see people with makeup, so searching is the most effective." But the bandit with a beard grinned and said, "You think too highly of them. Those 2 boys probably went out for the first time. We watched them for a long time, and we know best. If they want to leave the city, they must run away in a big way, would not think of modification. They had paid attention to these two people a long time ago, not only because of their generous spending, but also because of their childish behavior on the road. If they hadn't been helped by refugees along the way, they would have no idea how they died on the road. They followed each other for nearly half a month, but they were with a large group of refugees along the way, and whenever they encountered refugees, they would give alms, so that they dared not approach at all, and tried to steal and rob them halfway. But it was a pity that the round-faced boy counted 1 as 10, martial arts are high strength, no matter whether it is bright or dark, it will not work. In the past 2 days, for some reason, they suddenly sped up their journey and stopped stopping to help the refugees. Only then did they find a chance to contact them. It's just that I didn't expect those two people to be so powerful. The amount of the sweat medicine can make people sleep until night, but they wake up so early. They are just a little short of being able to avoid future troubles forever, and they can exchange their heads for 1,000 taels of silver. Pity. And just when he was screaming regrettable in his heart, Chi-Heiran and Fan Zijian supported each other and bowed their heads out of the North City gate. It was not until they walked a long way that Chi-Heiran took out a steamed bun from his bag and gave it to Fan Zijian, saying, "Eat quickly, let's hurry up after eating." It was the first time for Fan Zijian to walk such a long distance, and the soles of his feet were bubbling before evening. Chi-Heiran didn't know how to deal with it, he was anxious holding his feet. Fan Zijian kicked him and said, "It's all right, it's fine. Fortunately, we have arrived at Xingyuan Mansion, and Xingzhou Mansion is not far away." Chi-Heiran counted with his fingers, it takes 2 days to ride a horse, but 5 or 6 days to walk, this is still in the case of fast walking. Chi-Heiran looked at Fan Zijian eagerly. Fan Zijian's footsteps are not fast, and even slower after blisters on his feet. Fan Zijian turned his head guiltily, pretending he didn't see it. "There's still something to eat." Chi-Heiran rubbed his stomach, and said, "The steamed buns we exchanged can support tomorrow, so what should we do in the future?" Fan Zijian pointed to their baggage and said, "Take our clothes and exchange them. Didn't those refugees say that clothes can also be used as clothes? Let's go around the city, find some gentry or wealthy households, and just exchange some steamed buns with them." Fan Zijian was much more cautious at this time, and said, "Just exchange our 5 days' dry food." Chi-Heiran also calculated the distance in his mind, got up and tied all the burdens on Fan Zijian's body, and said, "I'll walk for half a day, and I'll carry you for half a day, so it's faster." Fan Zijian hesitated. Chi-Heiran showed a disgusted expression. "Don't worry, you are very light, I will just take a big knife and a big luggage." Fan Zijian couldn't help but turn dark. Chi-Heiran chuckled, and immediately carried him on his back and ran forward with ease. Fan Zijian said on his back, "Save some spare energy, what should we do if there is an emergency?" Chi-Heiran responded, tapped his toes on the ground, and quickly jumped forward, with Fan Zijian on his back, feeling more comfortable than sitting on a horse, and soon fell asleep. And not long after they left, a group of people rushed to the direction where they had stayed with their knives in hand, investigated for a while and said, "There are indeed 2 people who have stayed here, but I'm not sure it's them. Keep chasing, all the way to Xingyou Mansion." They told those refugees that they were going to Xingyou Mansion. Will they still stay in the city? That's why I didn't evacuate all the people, but I have to prevent them from slipping out of the city. Yuniang sneered, "I'm not as stupid as Lao Wu, anyone can grow, not to mention that white-faced boy is extremely intelligent. Is it possible that you can't even go out of the city in the simplest disguise?" The people following Yuniang bowed their heads. Yuniang continued, "Hurry up, they don't have any money, they have to go to the city to exchange money, and they have to catch them when they leave Xingyuan Mansion. Also, get in touch with the head of the family immediately, so that group of people also go down the mountain to find someone. We will enter the boundary of Xingzhou Prefecture in a short time. Qi Ziyuan, the general in Xieying in Lizhu, is not a vegetarian. It is inconvenient for us to show up in Xingzhou Prefecture. If they make a move, can we still get 1,000 taels of bride price? If they don't make people escape, we won't even be able to leave a deposit of 500 taels, Yuniang said, not to mention that they don't just look at the 1,000 taels now, they have already got it from the two teenagers. More silver. It's just that they didn't know their identities, they were chased and killed, and they carried so much money with them. Xinyuan Mansion is not far from here, Yuniang and the others can reach it before dark by speeding up their pace, and Fan Zijian is more cautious than she thought. They don't go into the city at all, they directly bypass the nearby villages, bypassing Xinyuan from the side. Yuan Mansion, go directly to Xingzhou Mansion. And because it was Qi Heiran who carried Fan Zijian on his back, not only was he fast, but he could also have night vision. He also hurried on the road when the sun set, and he didn't stop until he felt that his internal strength was only 20% and he was a little tired. At this time, they had already passed Xinyuan Fufu City, to its northern suburbs. Fan Zijian slept all afternoon, refreshed, took the initiative to pick up firewood to make a fire, took out the already hard steamed buns in the bag, roasted them until soft, and handed them to Qi Heiran. Qi Heiran meditated after eating, and Fan Zijian sat beside him, thinking of some reason to exchange his clothes for food. From the conversation Heiran heard, when they approached them, they found that they were carrying a lot of money, and second, they were bribed. Or the latter should be placed first, because they were paid attention to after being bribed, and then discovered that they have a lot of money. So, who is going to kill them? Fan Zijian glanced at Qi Heiran, who was sitting seriously in meditation, and couldn't help sighing slowly, already having a guess in his heart. Although they often caused troubles in the capital and had quarrels with some of their classmates, it was not enough for them to hire someone to kill. Besides, their enemies were their aunts and brothers. Although his mother did not live up to expectations, the back house of the Fan family was still in her hands, and the Lu family still had to abide by the rules of the concubine's room. Fan Zixiao couldn't even give out 100 taels of silver, let alone find someone to hunt him down. They are gone. Then only Heiran is left. It's just that he wasn't sure if it was his uncle or Wuxi. Fan Zijian thought, maybe he shouldn't have promised Heiran to take away the 50,000 taels of silver in the first place, but should have asked him to return the money. But just for 50,000 taels, he would kill his own son. Fan Zijian felt a little chilled, and was even more afraid to bring up this topic, for fear that Heiran would be hurt by it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1405. Qi Heiran meditated quietly. He didn't understand Fan Zijian's concerns. In fact, when he heard that conversation, he guessed that it was Wu Shi or Qi Feng who wanted to kill them. Regardless of whether it is the former or the latter, Qi Heiran is extremely disappointed with his father, but since he was a child, he knew that his father did not like him and his eldest brother, and he never treated him as such a father. But even thinking this way, Qi Heiran still felt heartbroken when he thought that he might send someone to chase and kill him. Since it hurts, don't think about it. Qi Heiran concentrated on meditating to restore his internal strength, and lay down next to Fan Zijian to sleep in the middle of the night, and got up early the next day to light a fire and bake steamed buns. In any case, they must find Big Brother quickly, the outside world is too dangerous. The two hurried on the road at the fastest speed, and finally saw a relatively large village in the evening. The farmers working in the fields had just returned home with their hoes on their shoulders and saw them staring at them involuntarily. Fan Zijian tried his best to wipe his smile and asked, "Master, how far is it from Xingzhou Fukan?" The farmer tightened his grip on the hoe and said, "It will take 3.5 days to walk. If you walk faster, you will be there in 3 days." Fanzijan was happy, glanced at Chi-Heiran beside him, then squeezed a smile and said, "Master, we came out in a hurry and didn't bring enough dry food, but we brought an extra set of clothes. You see, we exchanged 2 sets of clothes for 3 with you. Is the daily ration okay?" The farmer hesitated for a moment and then nodded, "Okay, come with me." The 2 hurriedly followed him back. The farmer ordered his wife to bake the cakes for the 2 of them for 3 days, and then turned to Fanzijan and said, "Where are your clothes? Let me have a look. If there are no patches, I can give you some more." Fanzijan unpacked the burden and showed it to him. Immediately, the farmer's face changed, and his wife's face also turned pale, and she clenched the kitchen knife in her hand. Chi-Heiran narrowed his eyes slightly, and stepped forward to stand in front of Fanzijan's left. Fanzijan also sensed something was wrong, but still asked with a smile on his face, "What's wrong, sir?" The farmer looked at the clothes in the bundle, and at the 2 young boys with pale faces. He couldn't connect them with the bandits, but Yuan Wailu would never lie to them. His wife didn't think so much, seeing that the 2 teenagers didn't intend to kill them, and thinking that her child would be back soon, she immediately went into the kitchen and took out the black steamed buns she was going to eat for dinner and stuffed them into the arms of the 2 teenagers. Pleadingly, "Please forgive me, 2 gentlemen, we only have this in our family. Last time you came to collect the protection fee, the family really can't come up with better things." Farmers are also silent. The 2 teenagers were stunned and said in a daze, "We are not bad people." The farmer looked at them for a while, then exchanged glances with his wife, and noticed something different. Because their area is far away from the county town, and at the foot of the Chu mountain, there is an easy to defend and difficult to attack Dushan opposite the Kitchen mountain. The bandits always like to make their homes on it, so they are often patronized by the bandits. In the past few years, it was because Lu Yuan went out to negotiate with the bandits on the mountain that their villages would pay some protection money regularly, and the bandits would ensure that they would not be robbed by other bandits or stolen by refugees, so the days were more stable. Although the 2 sides basically lived in peace, some bandits would always go down the mountain to fight teeth and rob them of their chickens, ducks, or vegetables. Because the amount was not very large, everyone endured it. So they had seen quite a few bandits. The 2 teenagers in front of them looked like they were pampered. Their eyes were clear and they didn't look like bandits. The farmer hesitated for a while, and finally said in a low voice, "Hurry up, the bandits on Dushan seem to be looking for you," saying that 2 young bandits in royal blue and duck blue brocade clothes and with a white satin belt stole the head of the house. 20,000 taels of silver bill, let us report suspicious people when we see them. The farmer turned around and took a big leaf, wrapped the 6 black buns and stuffed them into their arms, and said in a low voice, "Go quickly, if people know that you have been to our village, the bandits on Dushan will definitely not let us go of." Chi-Heiran's complexion changed slightly, and he suddenly raised his hand to knock the farmer unconscious, and his wife was also knocked unconscious by Chi-Heiran with a scream. Fanzijan was stunned and asked, "What are you doing?" "Someone is here, and they are hurting them by being awake, so go away." Chi-Heiran pulled Fanzijan and ran away. As soon as he went out, he met a group of people wearing black clothes and swords. The people on the opposite side narrowed their eyes and said coldly, "Chi-Heiran." Chi-Heiran picked up Fanzijan and ran away. The people on the opposite side immediately caught up. These people were different from bandits, they surrounded them from both sides with their lightness kung fu, and he knew that these people came from the capital to hunt them down. Kill them, and never allow them to escape again. The 2 were blocked in the village. Chi-Heiran fought against them while protecting Fanzijan. Because the terrain was not good for him, he gradually fell into a disadvantage. Fanzijan was in a hurry, seeing the mountains not far away, he immediately said to Chi-Heiran, "Let's go into the mountains, Hurry up. Chi-Heiran quickly dodged one of the knives, chopped down the two of them with 2 swipes, and then pulled Fan Zijian away to dodge the knife, then kicked the man away with a sweeping leg, then immediately picked up Fan Zijian and jumped onto the roof, tapping a few times jump out of the encirclement. The chaser praised, "It's such a pity for such a handsome lightness kung fu." After speaking, he raised his knife and chased after him. Member Lu opened his mouth wide and said after a while, my village." The villagers hid in the house, and did not dare to come out even if the roof was kicked off. They waited for a long time for everyone to leave before sneaking out to count the number of people. It was found that except for the farmer couple who received Chi-Heiran and the others who were knocked out, no one else was injured. Member Lu breathed a sigh of relief, wiped his cold sweat and said, "It's good that people are fine, talent is the most important thing." "Master, the head of the mountain asked us to organize the villagers to encircle the mountain, so shall we go?" Member Lu glared, "Can we refuse?" After thinking for a while, he said, "Those 2 young men may not be bandits, they have to be forgiving and forgiving, not to mention there are many wild animals in the mountains, you tell people not to go in too deep, just put on a show." Some villagers objected, "They even knocked out my 3rd elder brother and 3rd sister-in-law." Member Lu couldn't help cursing, "It would be bad if they didn't knock Lu Lao-san unconscious. Hurry up and carry him back and wake him up. Everyone will gather at the foot of the mountain after half an hour with hose." At this time, Chi-Heiran had entered the mountain forest with a battle and a retreat. When he arrived in the mountains, it would be much more convenient for him. He got rid of most of the people through the trees. Fan Zijian hugged the burden tightly in his arms, knowing that he was a burden, so he quickly used his brains to guide Chi-Heiran, "Let's go northeast, that's the direction of Xingzhou Mansion." Chi-Heiran quickly ran through the forest with Fan Zijian in his hand, occasionally picking up a few stones as hidden weapons and throwing them back. He knew that his internal energy was almost exhausted, and he also knew that it was impossible for him to fight with them with Fan Zijian, so he directly used his own advantages, used his lightness kung fu to the extreme, leaped in the forest, and left him far away in a short while, wait until the internal strength is exhausted before stopping. Fan Zijian put down his burden with a sullen face, and asked Chi-Heiran to change his clothes back, then tore the Gabu clothes they were wearing into pieces and hung a few pieces in the deep forest, before continuing to walk northeast. Even a small village is under the control of bandits, do they dare to go on the official road? The 2 teenagers felt that the mountains and forests were safer than the outside. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1406. The 2 of them lost their way in the forest before they met Mu Yangling. At first they were sure that they were fleeing towards Xingzhou Mansion, but as the trees gradually became denser, they were a little unsure of their direction. Even if there is the sun during the day and stars at night, a slight deviation in the direction can lead to the wrong direction, not to mention the complicated situation in the forest, sometimes encountering fierce beasts. How can they care about the direction? The black-faced buns given to them by the farmer had already been eaten, and at the beginning he was still more awake than Chi-Heiran, but in the end both of them were so hungry that they were dizzy, and supported each other and staggered forward. Fan Zijian thought, they were either eaten by wild animals or starved to death. He was a little sad in his heart. When he ran away from home, he thought of going to the north to join his eldest cousin and make a career. Who knew that he died on the way before he found his eldest cousin? And they are dead, the big cousin may not know it yet. At this time, Fan Zijian began to think back on the things along the way, summed up his experience, and said that if he could get out alive, or be reincarnated as a human being, he must learn a lesson in the future. After all, it was because they were too soft-hearted and not too cautious. If they hadn't distributed the money widely, but had been on their way, no one would have noticed them. It was nothing to distribute the money widely, so they shouldn't have sold their whereabouts completely. The situation in the state capital is that everyone knows that they are coming in this direction, so those bandits can block the way ahead after they escape their pursuit. Of course, the biggest mistake was that he and Heiran shouldn't have trusted the old lady and Yunyang mother and daughter softly at the beginning. If they hadn't gone with them, eaten that watermelon, or drank that bowl of porridge, there would be no need to be afraid with Heiran's kung fu. Them. Don't lose your horse, don't lose your money. Can those bandits who can only run on two legs catch up with them? Fan Zijian sat down under the tree, filled with grief and indignation for a moment. As expected, good people will never be rewarded. As soon as the thought came up, he smelled a faint smell of pancakes at the tip of his nose. His stomach could not help but growl, and he smiled wryly. He was so hungry that he was hallucinating. Chi Heiran, who was dizzy from hunger, grasped his hand and said in a low voice, "Someone is here." He was about to flee after pulling him up, but Fan Zijian grabbed him and said, "Don't run away, they can catch them if they want, at least they can fill their stomachs first, it's better than starving to death in the woods." So the two teenagers raised their heads and looked forward eagerly. Mu Yangling looked around with a bow and arrow on his back, while nibbling on the mustache in his hand, and when he turned his head, he met the two dirty teenagers. Fan Zijian and Chi Heiran stared at the mustache in her hand without saying a word, but they still had time to think in their hearts, so it was not a bandit, but a little girl. For a moment, various thoughts flashed through Fan Zijian's mind. Should he lure her to hand over the mustache, let Heiran force her to hand over the mustache, or just snatch the mustache? Before he could choose a plan, the little girl tore off a piece of mustache and stuffed it into her mouth, and handed the rest to Heiran. Alarm bells rang in Fan Zijian's heart, and he remembered the porridge that the old woman made for them. Who knows if there is anything in the mustache? But before he objected, Chi Heiran tore off more than half of it and stuffed it in his mouth. Fan Zijian was stuck in the middle and almost choked to death. In the end, it was better that the little girl gave him water. Hu Bing was mixed with water, and the empty and constricted stomach finally felt better. Fan Zijian also had the energy to find out their direction and the situation of this place. Knowing that the little girl lived in the village under the Xingzhou mansion, he immediately knew that they were not far from the Xingzhou mansion. His eyes lit up, and he wanted to thank him sincerely, but it was a pity that Heiran forgot the pain when his scar healed, and he still wanted to tell her where they are going. Fan Zijian immediately tugged at him, and bowed his hands to the little girl to thank him. At this time, he was still mostly grateful to the little girl. After all, the other party looked very young, only about 9 years old, and he knew the direction, so there was no need to go too far. Over guard. But the little girl who had just turned to leave turned back within a moment, still holding a hare and a pheasant in her hand, threw them over and said, "Here for you, deal with the pheasant and eat it, take the rabbit to the town, you guys if you pass through Mingshui County on the way, take them to the county and sell them, and the price in the county is higher than that in the countryside." Fan Zijian immediately turned from gratitude to guard. Heiran's kung fu is so good. They wandered around the forest for 3 days and he didn't catch a single feather. This little girl was empty-handed just now, how could she just turn around and hunt to prey? But Fan Zijian, who had been deceived before, didn't show anything on his face. He just cupped his hands and thanked him. He didn't dare to stay for a while after seeing the other party left, and was about to leave with Chi Heiran. He intended not to want these two prey, but Chi Heiran insisted on picking them up, and repeatedly stated that the other party is not a bad person. Chi Heiran swore, "She is really a good person, I feel it. When you met that old woman before, why didn't you feel that they were bad people?" Chi Heiran said depressedly, "But I didn't feel that they were good people, but when I saw that little sister, I knew she was a good person." Fan Zijian sarcastically said, "Yo, the feeling of co-authoring is still for a specific person." Chi Heiran glared at him with a puffy face, but his eloquence was not as good as his, so he could only stick his neck and shout, "Anyway, I think she is a good person. If you don't believe me, we will eat the pheasant in a while. If there is nothing wrong, you have to admit it." Aren't you afraid of being caught by the medicine stun and hacked? Chi-Heiran said in a fit of anger, it's a big deal, I'll eat it first, and you can eat it after you don't faint. In the end, it was Fan Zijian who became the test subject. He held the grilled black and red chicken legs and said, if you faint, I can't hold you back, let alone run for your life. I'll eat it. Anyway, when you are running for your life, you don't care whether you are unconscious or awake, you are being carried. Fan Zijian finally ate 1/3 of the pheasant, and after waiting for a quarter of an hour, nothing happened, so he had to admit that Chi-Heiran's feeling was reliable for a while. Even so, Fan Zijian was still both grateful and wary of the little girl, thinking that it would be fine to just return the reward, and he never thought that they would be so entangled with the little girl in the future. And his good brother turned into a fearful little husband, which made him regret it. If he had known that he would have starved to death, he would not have eaten her pancakes. He sacrificed Heiran's happiness for a pancake. It was really not worth it. Up. Of course, he didn't know anything at this time, they were just rushing to Xingzhou to meet their eldest cousin. I have to say that the prey given by the little girl helped them a lot. The two rushed to Mingshui County and exchanged the hare for a meal. As a result, they were surrounded by a group of soldiers as soon as they finished eating and went out. White brocade robe, hairpin white jade hairpin, handsome face, thick eyebrows, and starry eyes riding a bay red horse out of the crowd. For a moment, Fan Zijian thought he saw Chi-Heiran, who was a size bigger, and then he was ecstatic, shouting, Big Biao elder brother. Chi Ziyuan looked at his two younger brothers with a sullen face, and saw that they were dressed in ragged brocade robes and dirty. Their faces became more and more ugly, but his heart ached. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1407. After Chi Ziyuan was capable, he arranged manpower in the capital. His original intention was to protect his stupid younger brother, but because his younger brother's strength was too high, and Zijian was smart, those people were not useful. Instead, they became intelligence officers who collected information. Because the two little masters were not worrying people every day, they didn't realize that something was wrong until Chi-Heiran and the others left Beijing for 2 days. After finding out that Chi-Heiran and Fan Zijian had run away from home, they sent people north to report the news, and at the same time sent people to look for them along the way. However, they have limited manpower and cannot be as fast as Fan Siwen and Xiaotong. But the person who reported the letter soon arrived at Xingzhou Prefecture. Chi Ziyuan received the news that his younger brother had run away from home half a month ago, and immediately sent his capable subordinate Zhang Ziyi to lead people south to look for him, but there was no news at all in the past half-month. The people sent by Xiaotong and Fan Siwen had already arrived in Xingzhou Mansion, and they couldn't find anyone, nor did Master De Biao. They vaguely knew that they had missed someone, so they could only look back in a hurry. Chi Ziyuan looked at the two people who were in a state of embarrassment and hated iron and steel, and asked, how did you make it on your way? It's only 20 days' journey from the capital to Xingzhou Mansion, and you actually walked for more than a month. Chi-Heiran and Fan Zijian looked at each other, but they didn't dare to say that they stole more than 50,000 taels of silver notes from Chi's mansion. They only talked about how they were cheated and hunted down. After the money was confiscated by them, we are penniless. Originally we planned to become jade pendants and hire a carriage, but who knew that those bandits would not let us go, and when we almost arrived in Xingzhou Prefecture, there were still a group of people from the rivers and lakes chasing us. If I escape into the forest, we might not see Big Cousin again. Fan Zijian was afraid of being beaten, so he said whatever. He was pitiful, looked at his eldest cousin with tears in his eyes, and said, we couldn't catch wild game at all in the mountains, and we didn't dare to pick wild fruits to eat. We were hungry and thirsty all the time. I thought I would starve to death in the mountains. Chi-Heiran nodded while stuffing chicken legs into his mouth, and said greasy, later we met a little girl, she gave us pancakes, and also gave us a pheasant and a hare. otherwise we would starve to death. If you don't starve to death, you won't be able to get out of the forest in a short time, and maybe you will go further and further in, and you don't know how you died. Chi Xiuyuan looked at his brother who was devouring wolf, and then at Fan Zijin who was so skinny that his clothes were empty. He felt angry and hurt, and finally said with a straight face, "That is to be grateful to her. Next time I see someone give her the praise money, returning a favor many times more." He added, "As for the bandits, I'll deal with them, you don't have to worry about them. The person who chased us." A cold light flashed in Chi Xiuyuan's eyes, and he said with a sullen face, "Since they are people from the Jianghu, they should treat it as a matter of the Jianghu. Although the Zhu family quit the Jianghu and joined the army, they still have some status in the Jianghu. After discussing this matter with my uncles, deal with it. You just stay here with me, and I will write to my aunt and ask her to pick you up." Fan Zijin was taken aback, his eyes turned red immediately, and he lowered his head in pain and said, "Big cousin, we don't want to go back." Chi Heiran nodded repeatedly. "Nonsense," Chi Xiuyuan said with a frown, "Northern land is no better than the capital. It lacks everything here, and it's a border crossing, so it's very dangerous. It's okay. You want to join the army in the future, but you want to be an official through the imperial examination. If you stay here, you can have a good life. What future?" "I won't have a future when I go back to the capital," Fan Zijin said with a cold face. "I'm only being bullied there, so how can I study for the imperial examinations? If my eldest cousin doesn't allow me, then I'll go to Uncle Zhu." They go. Chi Xiuyuan was taken aback, and asked, "Who dares to bully you?" In his opinion, it should be his younger brother being bullied, right? He didn't have a mother, and his father didn't care about him. He was fostered in Fan's house. He was so stubborn, so it's no wonder he wasn't bullied. But Fan Zijin was different. He was the eldest son, his parents were there, his aunt loved him, he was also smart, he was the only one who bullied others since he was a child, and others rarely calculated him. Who would dare to bully him? Chi Xiuyuan looked at him suspiciously. Fan Zijin was so wrong that he shed tears. Chi Heiran stopped gnawing on the chicken leg, and complained with a touch of his mouth, "Brother, it was Uncle and Fan Zixiao who jointly bullied Zijin. You still don't know Uncle? It's all over the horizon. It was fine before, but it's gotten worse these years. You've only been away for a while, because of the matter of studying. My uncle will look at Zijin almost every now and then. It's obvious that he's very good at reading." Chi Heiran became even angrier when he saw his little friend crying, and blushed and said, "It's a good thing that Zijin passed the scholar examination this time, but who knows that before we had time to celebrate, my uncle said that I would give Anian the quota Zi Xiao. Before we left Beijing, he had signed up for the book." Chi Xiuyuan's face darkened when he heard this. Chi Heiran continued to be angry. Which family's favor is not given to the son? Even if it is not given to the son, it will be reserved for the eldest grandson. It is a hurdle for a scholar to become a scholar. I don't know how many people in this world have to suffer for this hurdle. Herr, Zijin is smart, but if he fails the Juran examination, this matter cannot be settled for a day. Even if he likes Fan Zixiao and wants to give him the place, it will have to wait until Zijin is admitted to the Juran examination. Now Zijin is only 12 years old, and Fan Zixiao is only 15 years old, so he hastily ordered Yin, because he is afraid that we will not know that he is guarding against Zijin. Fan Zijin's complexion turned paler, and Chi Xiuyuan's complexion became more and more ugly. In the final analysis, the popularity of Fan Siwen and Fan Zixiao is too ugly. He only decides on the candidate for Anian after Zijin grows up, reaches the crown or wins the exam. Even then, he still wants to give Fan Zi the spot. Xiao, even if Zijin gets angry, she won't react so much. But now Zijin was only 12 years old, and Fan Zixiao was only 15, so everyone knew that he was guarding against Fan Zijan in choosing Inian so eagerly. And Fan Zijan was his son, the only son. People in the capital still don't know what to think about Zijan. As long as there is a heart, everyone will be sad. Chi Ziyuan looked at the aggrieved cousin who bowed his head, and then at the angrily younger brother, thinking of the person who was sent to hunt them down on the road. His eyes sank, and he said, "In that case, you should all stay here. I will find a way to ask you to teach you how to read. Even if you are at the border, your studies will not fall behind, especially you, Zijan. Don't let your father and brother-in-law look down on you." Fan Zijan nodded solemnly, and assured him, "Don't worry, big cousin, I will study hard. As long as he can't go back and see those people who make him feel stuck." The two little friends looked at each other, and their moods couldn't help jumping up. The two came to the border for the first time. The folk customs here are tough, which is completely different from the gentle and prosperous Jiangnan. Chi Ziyuan saw that the two were in high spirits, so he ordered Fei Bai, the servant beside him, to order them around, and said, "I will stay by my side to serve you, and Fei Bai will give it to you. He is also familiar with the border, so let him take you wherever you want to go, you go." Besides Fei Bai, there were naturally many other guards and waiters. Seeing that the previous escape did not leave a psychological shadow on them, Chi Xiu immediately felt relieved and began to deal with the things they encountered along the way. First of all, he wants to suppress the bandits. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1408. Chi Ziyuan is a general in the west camp of Lizhu Road. He can independently guard Xing Cheng Pass, which shows his ability. Although he didn't have the courage of General Yuan to help the people at the frontier, he could be considered to have strict military discipline. He never allowed his soldiers to harass the local people, let alone allow bandits to appear under his rule. Therefore, in addition to fighting some small battles with the Golden Soldiers who fought in Kogu in Xingzhou Prefecture from time to time, they had to pay extra military taxes to support the army every year, and the people lived in peace. The bandits around Dushan were not under Chi Ziyuan's jurisdiction. Although he is 17 and young, he also knows the rules of the officialdom, and he will never step over his hands when he is not supposed to manage it, so he used to always dislike those bandits, but he would not manage the territory of the Zhoniang. But now that his younger brother is being chased and killed by bandits, if Chi Ziyuan can bear this anger, he will become a bastard. So he asked the scouts to find out the situation of the bandits, and at the same time sent people to contact the general in the middle camp, and he wanted to suppress the bandits for them. As a result, before the people who went to the middle camp came back, Chi Ziyuan received a terrible news from the scouts. "What did you say?" The bandits said Heiran and the others were bandits, and they even stole 20,000 taels from their boss. The scout nodded solemnly. However, this subordinate feels that this should be a slander from the bandits, let alone whether they have so many banknotes. Even if they do, it is impossible for the young master and the cousin to get in touch with, let alone steal it. They should release this rumor to attract more people to intercept and kill the young master and them. However, the scout looked at the general cautiously, and said, "When I checked further down, I found that the young master and the cousin had done a lot of good deeds along the way, buying food along the way to help the refugees. Although there is no exact number, it is estimated there are also 2,000 to 3,000 taels, or even more, and now the story of the two young masters is circulating on the official roads from north to south." Chi Ziyuan was startled for a moment, then his expression darkened, and he asked, "What else?" "Those Jianghu people have left the bandit camp in Dushan. It is said that they had conflicts before they left. It seems that it was because of the uneven distribution of spoils." Chi Ziyuan sneered, "They hired those bandits to kill my brother, What's the point? Thinking of the looted belongings of his younger brothers, Chi Ziyuan's expression twisted, and he waved his hands. Continue to investigate, find out the terrain of Dushan, and the number of bandits, etc. If you have anything, go to the military advisor. Chi Ziyuan turned around and strode to settle accounts with his younger brothers. These two brats must have kept the most important thing from him. It's just that he can't even come up with 2,000 to 3,000 taels. Where did these two brats get so much money? The scout was also distressed. 30,000 taels, how much is this? The two young masters think that there is too much money, so they can give it to the general. The general has recently been worried about delaying the military payment for the court. At this time, Fan Zijin was happily chatting with Chi Heiran on the couch. It's rare to be so comfortable after running around for my life these days. Fei Bai came in with 2 money bags, and said with a smile, "Fourth young master, Baiao young master, the money I just took from the account, the pocket money the general told you, how much do you want to keep outside, and where do you put the rest?" Chi Heiran immediately sat up and said happily, "Bring it to me to have a look." Fei Bai handed him the money bags, each containing 5 ingots of silver, each of which was 12 taels of silver. The two of them had just lived penniless, and now looking at these 50 taels is like looking at a baby. Chi Heiran touched the money with complicated emotions, and said, "It would be great if we don't lose our 10,000 taels." Fan Zijin's heart skipped a beat, and he drove out the doubtful Fei Bai, grabbed Chi Heiran's ear and said anxiously, "We can't talk about this anymore, we have kept the money theft secret." "What are you two muttering about?" Chi Ziyuan stood at the door and squinted his eyes to look at them. "Is there something that you can't say openly and insist on biting your ears?" Fan Zijin was so frightened that he lay down on the kong, and said with a guilty conscience, "No, it's nothing, Heiran has lice on his head, and I'm catching him." Chi Heiran nodded again and again, and brushed his hair with his hands, and said with a smile, yeah, I haven't showered or washed my hair these days, it's dirty, I didn't clean it just now, and where are the lice?" Chi Ziyuan snorted coldly, dragged a chair over and sat down opposite them, and said, "Just now when the scouts came to report, I just found out that my Daki has produced 2 good young men who help the poor and the weak." The 2 silver coins were thrown out without blinking, but I was curious, since they are teenagers, where did they get so much money? Chi Ziyuan stared at Fan Zijin closely, and asked, "Zijin, where do you think their money came from?" Chi Heiran looked at his elder brother, then at his little partner, and finally raised his hand weakly and said, "Maybe it was given by the family, the parents have money, so they love the children." Coincidentally, Chi Ziyuan said, still staring at Fan Zijin, "Those two are masters that their father doesn't love, and they can't touch the family's wealth." "That could be." "Shut up." Chi Ziyuan turned his head and glared at his younger brother, then continued to look at Fan Zijin. "Zijin, tell me." Zijin said honestly, "It was stolen." Chi Ziyuan frowned and asked, "Stole from whom?" Fan Zijin felt even more guilty, and said in a low voice, "The one who stole the Chi residence." Chi Ziyuan raised his eyebrows in surprise, and turned to look at his younger brother. He thought it was Zijin who stole the money from the family. Could it be that he stole the money from the Fan family, the Chi family? How Ran stole it? The 2 teenagers nodded guiltily, slowly climbed down the kong and stood with their heads bowed. Chi Ziyuan's heart was half down, but instead of being angry, he asked curiously, "You managed to touch the money at home? Come and tell my brother how you stole it." Chi Heiran carefully looked at his elder brother's face, seeing that he didn't look angry, he immediately climbed onto the kong and sat cross-legged, and said, "I also found out by accident, didn't Mrs. Wu force me to marry you on your behalf? Jin said that there must be a conspiracy in their rush, so she told me to keep an eye on them, and I had no eyeliner in the Chi mansion, so I had to keep an eye on it myself, only to find out that the Wu family gets a fortune every month, and the money is hidden in the closet inside. Chi Heiran said angrily, she is obviously just a concubine, but my father gave her all the money in the family. I can only get 5 taels of silver from the public every month, and when I go out to buy things, I have to ask someone to come to the house anyway. We are going to run away from home, so I simply took all the money, as if my father separated us in advance. A cold light flashed in Chi Ziyuan's eyes, and he asked, how much money? More than 50,000 taels. Chi Heiran glanced at the eldest brother cautiously and said, but we spent more than 40,000 taels on the way, and the remaining 10,000 taels were snatched by the bandits. Chi Ziyuan sneered and said, this money may not belong to my father, otherwise he would have sent me a letter reprimanding me and ordered me to return it, but I have not received any news from here, and he didn't even send anyone to find you. Know about silver? Fan Zijin thought quickly, and immediately said, then this money is Wu's private money. He added, this money must have come from a wrong way, otherwise the Wu family would not have swallowed it. It is probably greedy, or greedy from the Qi family. Fan Zijin chuckled, I said, so much cash is neither bought nor bought. Buy Zhuangzi and leave it in the bank to get moldy. It turns out that Wu's embezzled money. Then the person sent to kill you will have guessed it. Chi Ziyuan's eyes flashed coldly, and he said coldly, save for now, and we will settle the debt with her later. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1409. The second thing Chi Ziyuan has to do is to contact the 2 uncles to release Chi Heiran and Fan Zijin's killing order. The rivers and lakes are forbidden to use military force, but the internal strife among foreign enemies in the Great Zhou dynasty has continued, and they have no intention of tidying up the rivers and lakes. Therefore, the 2 sides have been in a state of not infringing on the river all these years. He was sure that the Wu family would not dare to touch Heiran and Zijin in his jurisdiction, but not necessarily those Jianghu people who had been bribed. There is nothing in this world that those people are afraid to do. Chi Ziyuan would not gamble with the lives of his younger brother and cousin, so he went to the Zhu family to deal with it. Although Zhu's family has been away from the world for decades, they still have some contacts, so this matter is not difficult for them. After Chi Ziyuan got his uncle's guarantee, he didn't care about it, and he started to suppress the bandits. In fact, there are not many bandits on Dushan, and there are few weapons. It is easy for the Zhongning to exterminate them, but the court always defaults on food and wages, and wars need food and grass, and the Zhongning is not willing to lose too many soldiers in order to suppress the bandits. After all, Dushan is easy to defend and difficult to attack, and there is still a price to pay if you want to capture it. Chi Ziyuan was willing to do it for him, and said that he would give half of the military merits to the middle battalion, and the general of the middle battalion agreed without thinking about it. Normally, he would not have allowed Chi Ziyuan to act as a substitute, and would have doubted his intentions, but the bandits and Chi Ziyuan have been involved in a lot recently, and he already knew the whole story from the scouts. Chi Ziyuan's anger was only because of his younger brother. If his brother was chased and hacked by bandits like this, he would definitely go and kill those bandits, so he agreed very understandingly. Anyway, he could gain half of his military achievements in exterminating Dushan bandits without losing a single soldier, so why not do it? As long as you have the determination, it is not difficult to exterminate those bandits. Although you will lose half of your military achievements, Chi Ziyuan will use the collected supplies to compensate, and all the money will be used to reward the soldiers and comfort the soldiers who died in battle. Therefore, the soldiers of Xieying leveled the cottage on Dushan like a chicken blood. The bandits got a new 10,000 taels, and they were robbed again before they could use it. This time, they were robbed completely, without even leaving a nest. The head of the family stomped his feet in hatred, and before he died, he regretted, if I knew those 2 boys were Chi Ziyuan's younger brothers, how could I touch them? He is a bandit, Chi Ziyuan is a soldier, he has no time to hide, so how could he rush to seek death? Therefore, the head of the family has great opinions on the group of Jianghu people who came to buy them to kill Qi Heiran together. This group of people obviously knew Qi Heiran's identity, otherwise they would not have proposed to kill them before they entered Xingzhou mansion. It's a pity he understood it too late. Fan Zijian felt relieved when he learned that the bandits who had persecuted them did not end well, and went to play with Qi Heiran shoulder to shoulder, but the eldest cousin said that when he came back, he would ask them to have a teacher, and those who should study, no one should be lazy when practicing martial arts. So Fan Zijian hurried to play, and then accidentally ran into the little girl again. This time he knew her name, Mu Yangling. Fan Zijian was very wary of Mu Yangling. There was nothing he could do, she didn't look like a 9-year-old girl at all. A 9-year-old girl in the countryside spends her days doing nothing but working and playing. Who can speak as fluently as her? The other party just slightly pursed his lips and smiled, bent his head slightly and stared at you with ink-like eyes. The whole person seemed to be like a spring breeze, as if she only saw you in her eyes, and didn't see the silly boy beside him, only saw her in his eyes. Who did Qi Heiran do this to? Someone he just met? Fan Zijian would never admit that he was jealous of her. He stopped Qi Heiran and prevented them from getting too close. His reason was very good. Those 9-year-old girls in Beijing are not as stable and astute as her in the court training. How can you treat her like a child, Orion's daughter to see? Qi Heiran said happily, that's why I said she is amazing. Those girls can only cry and cry, but you can see that she can hunt in the mountains. Speaking of this, he said with deep sympathy, hunting is too difficult. Just look at our situation in the mountains for a few days. I want to find a chance to ask her how to find prey in the mountains next time. Fan Zijian said solemnly, but I suspect that she has bad intentions. Don't forget, her father is half a barbarian. Qi Heiran corrected seriously, her father is a quarter of Hu people, and my elder brother has checked everything. They have lived in Mingshui County since her grandfather's generation. Her grandparents died because of fighting against Hu people and protecting the villagers. Yes, you don't have to worry about her father going to the enemy. Fan Zijian, maybe she sees our noble status, so she deliberately approached us to seek benefits. Qi Heiran scratched his head and asked, is our status very noble? Of course it is not noble in a capital where the royal family roams the streets and dignitaries walk everywhere, but this is in Xingzhou prefecture. His eldest cousin is not only a general of the same rank as the magistrate, but also a general who holds a large army and guards the border. To a certain extent, he is equivalent to the emperor of the earth. Fan Zijian looked at him with wide round eyes, and asked with his eyes, do you think we are noble or not? But Qi Heiran still wanted to play with Mu Yangling very much, so he hesitated for a while and said, the kindness of dripping water should be repaid by the spring, she saved our lives. Just because of that mustache and those 2 hares and pheasants, Fan Zijian's face was very ugly. Qi Heiran nodded solemnly and said, without the things she sent, we probably wouldn't even be able to get out of Mount Chu, and we would definitely starve to death in the mountains, so she is indeed a life-saving grace to us. Fan Zijian choked and stared at him speechless. Ever since they were cheated and chased, Zijian has been a bit extreme. Qi Heiran frowned in distress, patted him on the shoulder and said, although there are bad people in this world, I think there are still many good people. Zijian, let's not think so badly of her. Fan Zijian snorted coldly, non-committal, in short, he just didn't like Mu Yangling, he just couldn't understand her. He wanted to do something at first, but seeing that Qi Heiran had to study, practice martial arts, and go to the military camp to learn how to train soldiers, he was extremely busy, let alone Mu Yangling, he didn't even have time to accompany him. Fan Zijian reckoned that he couldn't even remember who Mu Yangling was, so he was happy not to mention her anymore, and let his mind sink into his studies. The Northland is no better than the capital city. The eldest cousin worked hard to help him hire a man to be a teacher, and he had already made up his mind that he would work hard to step down Fan Zixiao and his father in the future, so he studied very hard. His mind was immersed in the book, and he quickly put these disputes behind him. Seeing Zhoufukan is far away from Mingshui County, since Heiran has forgotten her, he doesn't think they will have a chance to meet again. But he didn't expect that the bond between them would be so deep. After a heavy snowfall or a military disaster, not only would they meet again, but they might even see each other often. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1410. Fan Zijin didn't like Mu Yangling. When he saw her for the first time, he was very wary. Of course, it was mostly because they had just been cheated and were being hunted down. But maybe the first time the guard was too deeply rooted in people's hearts, and she was really different from ordinary little girls, so this guard did not disappear for a long time in the future. Under such circumstances, he naturally doesn't like her, and even wants to keep an eye on Chi-Hair and not to like her too much. Even though he trusted her from the bottom of his heart, at least he was unwilling to admit defeat with his mouth. What really made him have a good impression of her was because she had a good mother who was a good cook. At the beginning, Fan Zijin followed Chi-Hair to the Mu family, mostly to prevent Heiran from being deceived by others. Later, he found out that Mu Yangling was as stupid as Heiran in a certain way, but he didn't change his behavior for the time being. Because Aunt Chu's cooking is so delicious. Xu Wanyang and his mother are completely different people. His mother acts vigorously and has a big temper. 8 times out of 10 times she quarreled with her father, she would beat him or whip him. But after the pumping, she would still cry and compromise, sacrificing his interests in order not to make her father sad. So he always felt that no matter how strong his mother was, she was actually very weak in her heart. Perhaps it was because she lost her parents since she was a child and was fostered in Uncle Zhu's house. No matter how proud she was, she never felt safe in her heart. So she pinned almost all her love and hope on her father. Xu Wanyang is different from her, she is very gentle, even weak, she is obviously the adult of the family, but she listens to Mu Yangling in everything, that Malu is just a relative who came out halfway, and what she says at home is better than her works. But sometimes she is very strong. Whenever the interests of Mu Shi and her children are involved, she will become strong no matter how afraid she is. She will give all the rights in the family to a pair of young children, but she will stand up and protect them when they are bullied. For Mu Yangling and Mu Bowen, she will gently persuade Mu Shi to let her children do what they like. Fan Zijin once longed for such a mother. It doesn't matter if she is weak or incompetent, even if she can't control the servant, he can protect her, as long as she supports him in her heart and defends him in front of her father. Here, he doesn't have to hold his heart all the time like in the capital, watching the people around him warily, afraid that they will steal something from him again. The eldest cousin is not his father, he will pressure himself to study, care about his physical and mental health, and plan for his future, and even start to find ways to make friends with the civil servants, hoping to pave a way for him. The eldest cousin would beat him up because of his bad thoughts, and then teach him to be a man. This is completely different from the father who only taught himself to study and let him make more brothers. It can be said that he felt a father's love that he had never had before from Qi Ziyuan. Here, he doesn't need to hear his parents quarreling every now and then, and he doesn't need to be wary of his father or brother. He just needs to study hard and grow up happily like Qi Heiran. And they were also cared by Xu Wanyang like a mother. Xu Wanyang is indeed a loving mother. She will make clothes for the 2 foreign children, he and Heiran, and remember their favorite dishes. Every time she goes there, she will prepare a big table. Because of this friendship, Fan Zijin reluctantly agreed with Mu Yangling and was willing to open a rabbit meat shop with her. Seeing Qi Heiran getting closer to her, and her eldest cousin acquiescing to their relationship because she saved Heiran again, Fan Zijin knew that Mu Yangling would probably become Heiran's daughter-in-law, his sister-in-law. Fanzijin felt that she was not worthy of Heiran. If she could have half of Aunt Chu's tenderness, half of her cooking skills and female workers were not bad, but her force value was not weaker than Heiran, and she could eat the cooked food, let alone the female workers. Having said that, only Chi Heiran dared to wear the clothes he made. So Fanzijin once wanted to persuade his eldest cousin to think about it again, but seeing that Heiran was happy and Mu Yangling didn't seem to be enlightened, he could only swallow what he said. Forget it, my friends are happy anyway. The three cousins reached a consensus on Chi Heiran and Mu Yangling, and Fanzijin was even more picky about Mu Yangling as his sister-in-law, so he was shocked when he felt that Xu Wanyang looked at him with the eyes of his mother-in-law. Almost scared to death. He quickly turned his head to look at Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran. The two were talking together, and they didn't know what they said. Chi Heiran laughed happily. Xu Wanyang came out with a plate of green vegetables, and greeted him with a smile on her face. This is the green vegetables made by my aunt. I know you should not eat more barbecue, so eat more green vegetables. If you want to eat more, tell your auntie, and I will cook for you. Fanzijin felt like sitting on pins and needles, and said, no need, this is very good. After a pause, he continued, maybe Heiran has something he wants to eat, auntie might as well ask. Xu Wanyang smiled and nodded, I'll ask him in a while, but that kid likes roasted venison, so it's probably enough to have this venison leg tonight. Fanzijin felt that Xu Wanyang looked at him with more satisfaction, and immediately didn't know what to do. Could it be that he wants to take away his brother's love? Thinking of Mu Yangling picking up a rockery and leaving, he couldn't help but shudder twice. Mu Yangling is not his mother, and his mother beat his father for meaning. No matter how big the trouble is, she will eventually compromise. Mu Yangling is stubborn, if she fights with him, he won't be enough to break her down. Fanzijin's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he looked anxiously at the two people opposite. So why on earth did Aunt Chu look at him like this? Chi Heiran seemed to be aware of it, raised his head to look over, and asked in surprise, Zijin, why are you sweating profusely? It's winter now, and Zijin has always been afraid of the cold, so he shouldn't be sweating so much even if he sits a little closer to the fire. Fanzijin wiped the sweat off his forehead, shook his head and said, it's fine. It seems that I have to tell my eldest cousin to let him quickly settle the marriage between Mu Yangling and Heiran, otherwise he will not dare to come to the house for dinner in the future. Mu Yangling and Chi Heiran didn't know the little Jeju in his heart. They were happily eating the venison with a blade, taking care of Bowen, Ziyuheng and Ziulan sitting beside them from time to time. Xu Wanyang did not participate in the children's barbecue banquet, but sat at home and looked out. The more she looked at Fanzijin, the more she liked it. This child is gentle and elegant, and he is well educated at first glance. The most important thing is that he will definitely be a civil servant in the future, and his life safety will not be threatened too much. It's a pity that Aling's status is too low, otherwise it would be nice to marry him. Although Xu Wanyang looked at Fanzijin through the eyes of a mother-in-law, she never thought of marrying her daughter to him. She came from an aristocratic family and knew the ways of officials and eunuchs. The first thing to pay attention to in marriage is the right family, otherwise, if a daughter marries into a high-ranking family, she will be looked down upon and bullied no matter how well-fed and well-fed. In her opinion, if she is not happy, she is not happy. Just like her, although following Mu she is not good at food and clothing, and may even lose her life, she is happy if she is happy in her heart. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1411. Fanzijin and Chi Heiran are good brothers. Besides his mother, the most important person in his heart, even for a long time, because of his mother's betrayal, Chi Heiran became the only person he trusted and relied on in his heart. So brothers and wives can't be bullied, let alone a wife like Mu Yangling. She doesn't even want to give him away for nothing. Therefore, the first thing he did after he ran home was to find his eldest cousin, and secretly suggested that he quickly settle Heiran's marriage. He still likes the clothes and meals that Xu Wanyang made for him, and he doesn't want to sacrifice these benefits in order to avoid suspicion in the future. Qi Ziyuan did not agree to make an engagement for his younger brother immediately. Although it is normal for Heiran to be engaged at this age, firstly, as the eldest brother, he has not married, so Heiran can't get past him. Secondly, the two children are young, and the younger brother often getting into trouble. Swords and guns have no eyes on the battlefield, so in order not to deceive the Mu family, it's better to wait until Mu Yangling is older before getting engaged. But it should be a hint to Mu Shi, after all, it is a matter of son and daughter, and the other party's consent is required. But alright, how could Zijin bring this up? Qi Ziyuan looked at his cousin amusedly, and asked with a smile, does Zijin also have a sweetheart? Tell cousin, if he is good, cousin will help you talk to aunt. Fan Zijin pouted contemptuously, I'm not as casual as Heiran. His wife must be gentle and virtuous, generous and dignified, and the most important thing is to listen to him, not like Mu Yangling. A few years later, when the Fan family wanted to marry him, he used this standard to choose his wife. He knew that he only had a reputation as a scholar, so the scope of choosing a wife was very small, and his father wanted to get some benefits from his marriage, so the scope of choice for himself was even smaller. Fan Zijin decisively decided to wait until after Qiu Wei passed, but he wanted to win more right to speak for himself and give him more choices. If it wasn't for worrying about appearing too arrogant, he would have said that he would wait until Chun Wei to make a decision. But after all, he looked at Chun Wei before he participated in Qiu Wei, which would give people a kind of arrogant expression, so he could only swallow his words. But after the autumn, he still persuaded his mother to delay the time again, and wait until next year's spring. Mrs. Ya was proud of her son's success. Although she had to wait another half a year, she agreed without thinking about it, and said with a smile, there are many men who get married after they reach the crown. Your eldest cousin is also married at the same age in the evening, didn't you marry a virtuous family daughter? Our family's Zijin will definitely not be bad. Fan Zijin stayed at the border for 6 years and only returned home for half a year. His feelings for his mother had already faded, and with the irreconcilable conflicts between them, he just twitched and reiterated, Mother, if you want to marry me, you must marry me, I have to see it. Xiaoxi nodded again, and assured her, don't worry, my wife wants to spend the rest of my life with you, so I naturally ask you to nod before agreeing. Fan Zijin got up satisfied, and when he was about to turn around and leave, he said, Mother, don't let my father interfere in my marriage for the time being. I don't like the families he chose. Seeing that their father and son were still so tense, Xia couldn't help but smiled wryly, and answered after a while, okay, mother pushed it for you. Only then did Fan Zijin leave satisfied. Afterwards, Fan Zijin was admitted to the second class in the spring. At that time, he was only 19 years old. He could be regarded as a young talent. In addition, he was unmarried, and the matchmaker almost broke through the threshold of his family. And Fan Zijin also chose a lady from several families given to him by his mother, the eldest daughter of the right servant of the third-rank official department, and her rank is higher than that of Fan Siwen, who is from the third rank, so he is regarded as a high climber. Fan Zijin chose her because the other party was trained by the court. He secretly went to see her. She was virtuous, and she was different from his mother, who was strong on the outside and weak on the inside. To cultivate. But the Fan family's situation was complicated, so he needed a wife who could hold her back, and she had to be skilled, at least not like Mu Yangling, who could only be reckless. The second is for the big cousin. They were determined to rebel, and if he could be engaged to the family of the right servant of the Ministry of Officials, then the eldest cousin would definitely need more help. The two families made a marriage, and Fan Zijan was quite contented. His father, who always disliked him, would sometimes greet him and discuss things with him, but Fan Zixiao avoided him every time. During that time, Fan Zijan could be said to be extremely proud. Until Qi Heiran was involved in the court battle because of Jingzhu's suppression of bandits. In order to run for Heiran, he gave up the Shujishi exam. In his opinion, the Shujishi exam is just a threshold to enter the Hanlin, and the eldest cousin is determined to rebel, so it doesn't matter whether he takes the exam or not. But he didn't expect this exam to be so important in the eyes of others. Because he missed the Shujishi exam, his father directly put on a posture of not recognizing him, and the marriage he had just made was rejected. Fan Zijan couldn't help laughing. It's just a Hanlin, so they value it so much. Yan Mo looked at the master cautiously, for fear that he would be sad. That's because they have blind eyes, master. Your ability lies there, let alone Hanlin. Even if you are not an official, you are no worse than others. That's right, even if I'm not an official, I'm not worse than others. Fan Zijan put the wine glass on the table, with a cold light in his eyes, and said, I want to take this opportunity to take a good look at who else is such a sycophant by my side. Man of. Yan Mo was very worried, and said cautiously, Master, Madam is sick with anger, and is going to talk about another marriage with you recently. Do you think it's time to slow down? What are you waiting for? Fan Zijan said expressionlessly, I don't believe it when I say it out loud. I won't be an imperial scholar, I won't be an official, and I won't be able to marry a wife. But what kind of good marriage can you talk about when you talk about it? Yan Mo opened his mouth. Seeing the coldness on Master's face, he didn't dare to say anything. When Qi Ziyuan learned that his cousin was divorced, he was angry and distressed, and finally wrote him a letter, telling him how to take this opportunity to see the faces of relatives and friends clearly. When our power is strong, there are many people who follow the trend. When the power is weak, there is no shortage of people who step on the high and step down. Marriage is a lifelong event. You might as well take this opportunity to see the face of the world. Wife, only the right one, it is the best. Zijan, the wife you want to marry may not be able to sing with you in harmony, sharing joys and sorrows. Parents, children will leave us one day, and in the end the only ones who are really by our side wife, therefore you must be cautious when marrying a wife. Don't wrong yourself to marry a high-ranking daughter for me, Qi Ziyuan wrote, although your ability to be a brother is limited, you don't need to sacrifice yourself like this. Even Heiran, I have fulfilled the love in his heart, let alone you. Fan Zijan received the letter with reddened eyes, and got up to find her mother. The Reborn Wife is Farming. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1412. Fan Siwen was with Mrs. and saw that his son didn't look good at all. He was still angry that his son missed the Shujishi exam, and with the divorce, he felt that this old face was completely humiliated. Fan Zijan didn't care at all. Anyway, his father was angry with him 9.5 times out of 10 times, and the only half time he wasn't angry might be because he was too good, which added infinite brilliance to his face. So Fan Zijan just ignored him and said to Xia, Mother, my marriage is not in a hurry. You can make it clear to outsiders that I will not become an official, at least before his eldest cousin became the emperor. He was not interested in doing officials of the great Zhou dynasty. Xiaxi was taken aback, while Fan Siwen was furious. He slapped the table angrily and said, Nizai, you don't want to be an official. What are you studying for the imperial examination? Fan Zijan said carelessly, I study for reason, there is no other way. I have no father's education, I can only study and learn to be a man by myself, otherwise I will not become a bastard. Fan Zijan said mockingly, as for the imperial examination? I took the exam before I wanted to be an official, but now I don't want to be an official anymore. Fan Siwen fell backward in anger, pointing at him with trembling fingers, unable to speak. Xia's expression was exhausted. She looked at her husband, then at her son, seeing Zijin's gloomy brows and eyes, feeling distressed and guilty for a moment. She gritted her teeth and ignored Fan Siwen's roar to comfort her son. Okay, don't be an official. If I don't become an official, is it possible that my son will not be able to marry a wife if he is not an official? Fan Siwen was very disappointed. He looked at his wife with red eyes, then at his son who was full of sarcasm, and finally walked away. Although the legitimate son is excellent, he is too rebellious. Although Zhi Xiao is a bastard and a bit stupid, he is filial and obedient. Fan Siwen thinks that instead of placing the hopes of the Fan family on Fan Zijin, it is better to pin them on Zhi Xiao. Fan Siwen absolutely refused to admit that the bigger reason for his decision was that he couldn't control Fan Zijin, and couldn't be the opponent's master. Xia family felt sorry for her son, and felt guilty about his running away from home for 6 years, so she almost went all out to help him find a suitable wife. It was at this time that the Xia family came to the door. Of course, the Xia family was very reserved, but they just talked to the Xia family through a banquet, implying that they had an unmarried second daughter, and it was up to the Xia family whether they could continue. In fact, Xia didn't like Xia at first. Although both parties have the surname Xia, they have nothing to do with each other. Xia's father is the magistrate of the 4th rank, Fan Siwen is from the 3rd rank, and the legitimate daughter is a good match for the legitimate son. But Fan Zijin has already said that he is not an official, but according to the current secular view, Fan Zijin has been promoted. The Xia family looks down on Xia not because of her higher status, but because of her character. Although Xia was pampered and raised by the Xia family since childhood, not only did she not have the habit of domineering, but also a little cowardly, with a soft personality, as if anyone could step forward and poke her. The situation in the Fan family is complicated. The Xia family knows that her husband's heart is far away from the sky, and the servants of the Fan family are stepping down. It took her nearly 10 years to control the chaotic inner house after killing her mother-in-law. That's it, Fan Siwen's concubines also have their own influence in the back house. For the sake of the son, daughter-in-law and future grandson, the candidate for the daughter-in-law must be strong and capable. For example, the eldest daughter of the former right servant of the Ministry of Officials, her personality is very suitable. At least she will not be bullied to death when she marries Zijin. Therefore, although the Xia family's situation is the best, the Xia family excluded his family from the very beginning and did not plan to approach him further. But Fan Zijin was interested. After receiving the letter from his eldest cousin, Fan Zijin seriously thought about his future. He was going to rebel with his big cousin, and if he failed, he would be doomed. Even if he didn't die, he would be confiscated and exiled. But if he wins, high officials and generous salaries are indispensable, so there are only 2 paths in the future, and there is nothing to think about. But what about family? Fan Zijin didn't want to live like his parents, quarreling every day for his wife and concubine, for his concubines, for various interests. After seeing the harmony of the Mu family, and seeing Heiran and Mu Yangling's Qin and Zither playing in harmony, Fan Zijin thought, at least his future wife can't hinder him, and can't make him even have the desire to go home. He has enough things outside, but he doesn't want to quarrel at home like his father, so he won't be exhausted. So the question is, what kind of wife can he put up with? Yes, bear with it. Both Qi Heiran and Mu Yangling said, who can stand you in the future? Although he didn't want to admit it, his temper wasn't very good, but he was a genius. Fan Zijin felt that a genius could have bigger flaws. Fan Zijin is relatively slow emotionally, but there is no way, he is smart, he directly substitutes the people around him. He thinks, if Mu Yangling is his wife, then either he or she will die in the end, but given Mu Yangling's high force value and stupid, he is more likely to be beaten to death by her in the end. Therefore, the force value is high and strong, and people with strong opinions are excluded by him, and such people cannot get along with him. If it was a wife like his mother, Fan Zijian shook his head. His mother was also very strong. If he married such a wife, he would go to the northern suburbs to play, but she insisted on going to the western suburbs. They must have had a quarrel. Husband and wife are not brothers. The more quarreling he has with Chi Heiran, the better the relationship, but he is definitely not with his wife, so people with the personality of his mother are also excluded. Wu. With a heart of snakes and scorpions, he was afraid that his children would either be raised badly, or he couldn't help but kill each other. Fan Zijian substituted all the women he had met, and found that he liked Aunt Chu the most in the end. He regards her husband as the sky. He does whatever he says, takes care of him wholeheartedly, raises the children, is gentle and kind, is also knowledgeable, and has vision, although he is a little weaker, but it doesn't matter, he can protect the other party. In a word, if his future wife asks him to point east, he must never point west, and when he looks north, he will never point south. According to this standard, Fan Zijian searched through the ladies selected by his mother, but finally found that none of them were suitable, because his mother's standard for selecting a daughter-in-law was exactly the opposite of his. Fan Zijian couldn't help being depressed, and angrily slapped the table and accidentally saw the invitation card sent by the Xia family to the Xia family. Fan Zijian recalled what she heard complaining to her mother yesterday when she went to see her mother. The girls of the Xia family are pretty good, but it's a pity that they are too weak. Fan Zijian took the invitation, turned around and asked Yanmo to check the Xia family, focusing on the Xia family. All Qi Ziyuan's power in the capital is in the hands of Fan Zijian. It may be difficult for him to check on others, but it is easy to check on Xia's family. Because Xia's Hifu had just brought his family to Beijing to report on his work, his foundation in the capital was not stable, and the family had hired some servants in addition to some servants, so it was very easy to inquire about his family's situation. Information about the Xia family and the Xia family was quickly delivered to Fan Zijian. Fan Zijian was very satisfied after reading it, not only for the Xia family, but also for the Xia family. The Xia family really loves Xia's family. In the past, because Xia's father was the magistrate and apparent official, it can be said that the whole city was flattering the Xia family, but Xia's father insisted on not choosing a suitable son-in-law because of his vision. Too high. What he wants for his future son-in-law is not a high official and high salary, let alone a strong family background, but to be kind to his daughter, and it is best to let the Xia family keep on him, so that even if he has bad intentions in the future, the Xia family will be there for him. He didn't dare to treat his daughter badly. In addition to this, one has to be in the wind, knowledgeable, and not to have flaws in character. It can be said that the starting point of everything in the Xia family is the daughter.